With the EOC coming up in 3 weeks, I want to review different modes of writing with you in preparation for the on-demand essay portion of the test. I will be focusing on a different mode each week, so this week we're starting with narrative writing. By the end of this video, you should not only know what narrative writing is, but you should also understand the elements of narrative writing and be prepared to apply this information to an upcoming on-demand writing assignment. So what is a narrative anyways? A narrative is a story that has a beginning, middle, and end. The foundation of narrative writing is the same as you learned in elementary and middle school. However, the older you get, the more sophisticated and developed your writing is expected to be. This video will give you the tools to make sure you can pull that off. There are 5 slides for 5 different elements that you need to include in your narrative essay. Please take notes on the graphic organizer provided for you. These notes will serve as a checklist for you when you write your essay later this week. The beauty of this video is that you can go at your own pace, so feel free to pause and rewind your video as you need to. The first element of narrative writing that I want you to consider is the setting. Before writing, think about where is your story going to take place. The scoring guide emphasizes that you need to use a lot of sensory and figurative language, so use that to paint the picture for where the story is going to take place so readers can see and feel that setting. Writers typically introduce the setting in the exposition or intro paragraph of an essay. The physical location of my story is going to take place in room 114 at Francis Howell Central High School in Cottleville, Missouri. But don't limit yourself to that. My story is about a teacher, Miss Tompkins, whose grades are due at 3. Does the fact that it's 2015 matter? Does the season or the time of day matter to the story? I might include that the story takes place the day that students return from spring break and the grades are due by 3. The fact that it's the year 2015 means that Miss Tompkins is able to use Google Docs to collect and grade her students' essays. The fact that it is spring could contribute why her students are rowdy that day. So when writing your essay, think about where it's going to take place and how you're going to show that to your readers. Next, consider who the characters will be in your story. It's okay to have multiple characters, but don't include too many because your time for writing this essay is limited. When introducing your characters, most likely in your intro paragraph, use direct and indirect characterization to develop these characters for the readers. Again, use concrete and sensory language to help the reader picture your characters. You can develop a character by describing their actions, speech, using dialogue, appearance, thoughts, interactions with other characters, and how they are perceived by others. For example, think about all the things that I reveal in this next quote about Miss Tompkins. Miss Tompkins, a sleep-deprived young woman, slammed her laptop closed and stormed to the front of a boisterous classroom of 10th graders. The students immediately stopped talking, and one student asked, "Miss Tompkins, is it our essays? Are they really that bad?" Just in these 2 sentences, readers know Mrs. Tompkins is married. She's a high school teacher. She needs more sleep. She's frustrated. Her students respect her and care about their essay grades. So when writing your essay, make sure that you include direct and indirect characterization to develop those characters. Also, before writing your essay, consider what the conflict will be. Before creating a conflict that is too elaborate, keep in mind that the conflict is something that has to be resolved by the end of the essay. Just like you can develop characters, you can also develop a conflict. Typically, authors include an inciting incident. This is going to be in the intro paragraph. This just means that you're giving the readers clues that something bad's going to happen. So maybe that I would include that Miss Tompkins' grades are due by 3 and they're not in the grade book. This intrigues the reader and makes them want to read more to figure out how things are going to be resolved. I might also include that the school's Wi-Fi is down. This is going to show that Mrs. Tompkins is going to have a problem with her students getting grades off of Google Docs and into the gradebook. So by the end of the intro, I'm just going to include that her grades are due at 3 and that she hasn't entered them yet. Later in my narrative, I'll add details about how she is so busy teaching 1st through 6th hour that she can't do it then. I'll then add that the Wi-Fi is down, that she has no time to do this until 7th hour, and that might be the conflicts. No time until 7th hour plus the Wi-Fi going down. Later then, in the following action, it might be that the Wi-Fi comes back on around 2:30, so she only has 30 minutes to finish her grades. Every good conflict needs a resolution, so plan on how that conflict will be resolved. Typically this happens in your conclusion paragraph. Your time is limited, so make sure you get to this. You don't want to leave the reader hanging with an unresolved conflict. They need that satisfaction of knowing the problem solved. So for example, my readers need to know that Mrs. Tompkins submitted her grades just in the nick of time. Although the EOC scoring guide doesn't directly mention theme in the scoring guide, it's something that might naturally become apparent in your conclusion. You don't need to say the moral of my story is, but you might show how the character learned from his or her experience. For example, I might add that Mrs. Tompkins realizes that she should have put the grades in the grade book the night before, or she could have submitted grades without essays and put those grades in for fourth quarter. Finally, you need to consider what the point of view will be for your story. You know the setting and characters, you know the conflict and resolution. What point of view will most effectively help you tell that story, first or third? Both options have their benefits and disadvantages. First-person point of view helps readers feel like they're in the story, but it also creates a sense of bias. It limits the reader from how the other characters think and feel. Third person helps readers objectively know the thoughts and feelings of all characters, but it gives readers a personal connection or feeling. It doesn't give them that personal connection or feeling that they're part of the story. So for example, I'm choosing to write my essay in third person point of view because I want readers to know how the teacher feels, but also how the students feel about the teacher. There are a few more things to keep in mind in your essay. You know what the character setting, point of view, conflict, and resolution are. Keep that in mind, but also know that there's no rule saying that your essay has to be real. If you see this prompt and it's not speaking to you, make something up. You can be inspired by a real life event. You can be inspired by something in a book, a movie, or a TV show, but don't limit yourself to telling something that really happened to you. Also consider what you like to read. Make sure you include those elements in your story. If it's humor, if it's a lot of description, those sort of things. You only have 90 minutes, so make sure you're able to develop your whole essay within that time. Don't bite off more than you can chew. And lastly, there's no rule saying that your essay has to be that traditional 5-paragraph essay. It might be 4 paragraphs. But don't go much shorter than that, because the scoring guide emphasizes that your ideas need to be developed, that conflict needs to be developed and resolved. Same with the characters. So don't make that too short. You're going to see some prompts that look very similar to this. You can even pause now and read through these prompts. Notice that they start with a generic statement followed by a task, an audience, and a topic. They're pretty basic. It is important to think on your feet and create a great story from a bland prompt. For example, the first one asks to write about a winter memory. I could tell about a time that I went to Union Station with my dad in just a few sentences. I don't remember exactly what we spoke about. I don't remember every detail, but I'm going to use that experience instead and create this great 5-paragraph, 4-paragraph essay with this great plot. I'm going to create this conflict that may or may not have happened in real life to really interest the readers and make sure I conclude that by the end. I'm going to make up some dialogue and add in some description. So bottom line, don't let a bad prompt hold you back from being a great storyteller. So the point of this video was for you to take notes along the way, to know what narrative writing is and understand the elements of narrative writing. And you're going to be using this as a checklist when you're writing your essay on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. So finally, your task is to demonstrate your understanding of what narrative writing is based on the video and create your own analogy for narrative writing. In Schoology, add a comment to this video and with your analogy. So an example might be that narrative writing is like a good sandwich. The beginning and end of the story is like the bread that holds the sandwich together. Bread is important because it needs to be hearty enough to hold the sandwich together, but it also needs to be soft and flavorful, just as your intro and conclusion need to hold together your story by introducing character, setting, and conflict and wrapping it all up at the end. Also, you don't want to give your readers too much to chew on, so make sure your bread isn't too thick or stale and boring. The meat and the cheese of your story is the conflict and characters because it is the focus of your sandwich and the most filling part. Also, a good sandwich has the right condiments and toppings that give your sandwich the extra flavor and accentuate the meat and cheese, which is just like your figurative language, imagery, and dialogue. Add your analogy to Schoology to demonstrate your understanding of narrative writing, and be prepared to pre-write on Wednesday and write your own narrative on Thursday.